is Charlie Potter. Does an outstanding job covering the Alabama Crimson Tide for BOL, part of 247sports.com. And we bring Charlie on. Charlie is a noted Disney enthusiast. He's been to both parks. I believe that is correct. Well, I know it is. He's been to Disney World and he's been to Disneyland. Charlie, based on those visits, give us your favorite of the two, and is the edge wide or is it narrow? How do you kind of put those two together?
That's tough. Disney World, there's a lot to do. You have 4 parks, and I'm kind of biased towards Epcot just because I think it's the more adult-friendly of the parks. Disney's a very nostalgic thing for me, but I'm not, 5 or 6 years old anymore. I think Disney World has a little bit more draw in that regard, but Disneyland, if you just go to the original park, it's pretty cool. You get to see, basically Walt Disney's vision and everything like that. You get to see the original, the charm. So it's pretty cool. I'd probably give the edge though to the world, just because, like I said, there's more to do. It's easier to access for us. It's a little expensive, especially if you go during the summer, but we typically never go during that time because we'd rather deal with the humidity here than the humidity in the crowds there. So, I would probably give it to Florida, but we've enjoyed our time at both of them.
Yeah, when you go to both, you realize how much more room Disney World had to work with down there in Central Florida. Here in Anaheim, you're literally in a neighborhood, and you're throwing a major theme park right in the middle of it. So there's some restrictions, I think, that Disneyland has dealt with in the past compared to maybe Disney World. Speaking of a Magic Kingdom, that was Bridgestone Arena in the second half last night for the Alabama men's basketball team. Charlie, now be honest with us. At 38-24 in favor of Ole Miss at the half, what were you thinking the Crimson Tide's chances of a comeback were?
Well, we had a live set up on the message board, and you could see the frustration from fans. And here of late, just so we don't have a million threads about the same thing up on the board, I've put like a reaction thread up, just like here, post your post game reactions, gripe and complain here, basically, instead of throwing up 1,000 threads on the same thing. And somebody joked that you might as well go ahead and throw that up on the board, and I was serious. Like I was getting it ready. I had it basically the show ready, typed out. I just had to hit publish, but we've joked about it all year. It's a phrase that Avery Johnson's used, but it was certainly a tale of two halves for Alabama, and they came back, fought back. Ole Miss didn't play very well, but I think some of that had to do with Alabama's defense. But give them credit. They're staying alive. Their postseason hopes are alive, and now they have a tough test in Kentucky.
Yeah, Ole Miss in the second half last night, 7 of 29 from the field, just 24% on their field goal attempts. Alabama, 13 of 31, got to the free throw line a good bit in that second half as well. Didn't make a bunch of them, but still had a 9-2 edge in free throws there in the second half as well. Talk about Tevin Mack, Charlie, and I was among them in the preseason going into the season, really excited about what this guy would bring to the table. It's only been in flashes, but I guess most importantly for Alabama last night, one of those flashes took place in Nashville against the Rebels. Yeah,
and I mean, it's kind of been Alabama's season in a nutshell. He's just been inconsistent, and everybody has been. But, we've seen Tevin in certain situations step up, and, Avery Johnson talked about how he probably wasn't that happy that he was coming off the bench, and that might have motivated him. But, Tevin's a guy that can score. He's not some guy that was coming from a small school, having success, and then transferring to Alabama. He was at Texas and was the Longhorns' leading scorer. And Texas is a good basketball school. So I think if Alabama can get that consistency from Tevin on top of the things that we've seen from guys like Kyra Lewis and Dante Hall, that makes them better. And with them going with a little bit of a bigger lineup last night and bringing Tevin off the bench, that gave them that spark. We've kind of seen that at times with John Petty, and that's worked. And they brought both of those guys off the bench last night, and those are two guys that can give you some scoring punches whenever your starters are a little winded or maybe not getting the job done. And he was hitting on all cylinders. There's situations, and you can kind of see it a little bit during pregame warm-ups where Tevin's out there and he's just hitting everything. You know it's going to be a good night, and that was the case for him. I think he was 4 for 6 from 3, and there were some contested shots that he was making. So he can certainly do that. I think that's what Alabama envisioned they were going to be getting from him all season long, and now with the season on the line, it came at the perfect time.
You touched on it. Avery made the decision last night to go with Riley Norris and Galen Smith in that starting 5. Really went big, and as a result, Dante Hall, Riley Norris, Galen Smith, they combined for 31 rebounds between the three of them. Dante with 15 in all. Do you think that's something we'll continue to see against Kentucky tonight, or do you think this was maybe a one-off in sort of reaction to what Alabama was able to do on the backboards against Ole Miss in the first go-around, and it certainly happened even more so last night? But what about Kentucky tonight? Do you think maybe Avery sticks with this 5?
It's possible. He was actually asked about that in post-game, and he said he wasn't going to give away his starting lineup. But, the Wildcats are a long team. I think they're going to get Reed Travis back tonight. I think he's 6'8", big body for them. It's a possibility. I think, what you saw from Riley Norris and Galen Smith last night was big for Alabama. Galen was a body down low, and sometimes they usually just have one big on the floor kind of here lately, and Dante Hall has disappeared at times. I think having Galen Smith out there, that opens things up for Dante, who's one of Alabama's best players, if not their best player. And so I think that I wouldn't be shocked to see it again. That being said, though, they can go a variety of different ways. It was interesting also, not only just to see the lineup change, but Alabama went with a 10-man rotation, and then we've seen things tightened up a little bit here of late. But with a guy like Daniel Giddens out with a cast on his hand, I would expect to probably see that same situation if they go with that starting lineup, because Alex Reese can provide good minutes and hit threes off the bench, and that's another big in there. Obviously, Tevin Mack can play at the 4, but it's interesting to see Avery shake things up this late in the season. But like they said all week long, their backs are against the wall, and they're trying to pull it out of the stops to keep their season alive.
Where do you think Alabama sits right now in relation to the NCAA tournament and its at-large bid hopes? Was last night just enough to get them back into the conversation? Was last night enough to maybe get them in the door? Where do you think that sits going into Kentucky tonight?
I think they'll be in the conversation. Like Avery said, they have some really good wins. They've beaten Ole Miss twice, and they're an NCAA tournament team. They've obviously got that win over Kentucky. So it'll be interesting. You look at some of the brackets around the country. Jerry Palm has them in his first 4 in the play-in game with Arizona State. Joe Lunardi, I think they're his first 4 out, so they're kind of sitting there on the fence. I think they're in the conversation. The win last night obviously helped. I don't know necessarily if a loss hurts them, or it's just there's going to be other bubble teams that's going to be playing. I don't think losing to Kentucky hurts your resume, but at this point in the season, when you're needing a win, it doesn't matter who you're playing. You win to stay alive. So the good news for Alabama when it comes to all these bracket projections is other bubble teams, and it's been kind of the case all year, have been losing and haven't been that great. Last night, TCU, NC State, I believe it was Indiana, all lost, and they were kind of on that last 4 in, first 4 out fringe as well. So there are other bubble teams that are falling, and if that's the case, maybe Alabama can sneak in as that last 4 in. So we'll see. Obviously, a win against Kentucky would all but probably seal their fate. that's a tough order, beating the Wildcats twice in one season, and the Kentucky team that Alabama has not had success against in the SEC tournament. I think Avery Johnson's 6-3 as a head coach in the tournament, and those 3 losses have all come to Kentucky. So it's going to be a tall task, that's for sure.
Yeah, the Power 5 teams on the bubble losing helps Alabama, and I guess it helps some of the mid-majors to low majors as well that are hoping for an at-large bid. But if you're Alabama, you want to be on that table against a Belmont or a mid to low major, because we all know how that typically plays out when those teams square off for at-large berths. Charlie, we want to shift gears with you and talk some football free agency as it relates to former Alabama players. I would say a pretty good week for those guys. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been 5 or 6 guys that have signed contracts, and they're already ahead of about or close to $250 million, if not more. And it's nice to see the money fly around. I love this time of year just to see where guys end up, guys moving to different teams, NFL teams, just throwing money at people and making what seems on the surface dumb decisions. But in terms of just the Alabama guys, they seem to all be going to good situations, at least from a financial standpoint. It's good to see C.J. Mosley get paid as one of the best linebackers in the league. I think he's kind of earned that title with his time in the league. Mark Ingram is on the move to Baltimore. I think that's a good system fit for him, unless they go out and draft a guy like maybe even Josh Jacobs. He should be the bell cow for them. I know they have some other pieces, but he'll be the feature back, barring something happening in the first round, running back-wise. Landon Collins goes to Alabama North up there, the Redskins, and it's a situation for him where he's playing for a team and going to be playing a position that he idolized growing up that Sean Taylor used to man. So it's a good situation for him, and he gets a boatload of money. And then the other one I think is really interesting and pretty cool is Clinton Diggs going to the Chicago Bears. He's going to be manning that back end of the secondary with Eddie Jackson, and he's a guy that he took under his wing whenever Eddie came to Tuscaloosa, and now they're going to be teammates again in the NFL. That's always pretty cool to see. So a lot of movement, a lot of guys still out there left that haven't signed. You look at some of the names out there, they're big names. Mark Barron's still out there. Just yesterday, A.J. McCarron was released by the Raiders, so he's a free agent. So there's a lot of other guys to keep track of. But, so far the guys that have signed deals, they've been huge deals, and they've certainly been interesting landing spots, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up about the potential scenario of Mark Ingram and Josh Jacobs together in Baltimore, which could be similar to what we saw with Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara down in New Orleans, if it plays out that way, and a couple of guys that could really get it done in some different ways in that be more backfield. And I like Clinton Dix doing the 1-year deal with the Chicago Bears because it is such a crowded year in the safety market. Just look at Landon Collins and the Bucks he commanded. If has a really good year in 2019, he sets himself up for that kind of deal perhaps in 2020 and beyond. So some good news for Alabama, former Alabama players in free agency. And I wanted to ask you about that in relation to, the Alabama football program. We always talk about the NFL draft, Charlie, in relation to Alabama recruiting and how impactful that is. But, man, these second and third contracts these guys are getting, there's more money. There's more money in those second and third deals. It's got to be just another benefit to Alabama from a recruiting standpoint. But what do you think in terms of player development? If you're Scott Cochran, right now, you're showing guys in the weight room, I got to think, these deals that these guys are signing in their second and third contracts.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. He even tweeted, I think he quote tweeted one of the Alabama Pro Updates tweets because that guy's all over it with these free agent signings and Alabama and the pros. But he tweeted out, I think it was when Mark Ingram, or it might have even been before Ingram. I think James Carpenter might have been the last person to sign a deal. And, I think 4 or 5 players had already eclipsed $200 million. And, he tweeted out those numbers, and Scott Cochran went out and retweeted that and said, these are the, after you leave here, these are the only numbers I care about. And so he's definitely probably doing that. I'm sure he's screaming that all over the weight room. Maybe not this week because there's nobody there, but he's rehearsing that for whenever the players get back, or at least go into their graphic design team and get some graphics drawn up so they can tweet something out, because that's a big draw. We've seen a lot of people, and I've made the jokes on Twitter. I think you've made the jokes on Twitter about all these Bama busts that people talk about, but a lot of these guys, Mark Ingram, Mark Barron, they're going to be signing second, third contracts. They're still in the league and they're still thriving. Guys like James Carpenter, Kareem Jackson, people I think that some Alabama fans, maybe the casual Alabama fan, forget about. Kareem Jackson had one of the best years of his career last year, moving to safety, and now he's with the Denver Broncos on a 3-year deal after 9 years with the Houston Texans. So these guys are proving that their successes in the league, and a lot of that starts with their time in Tuscaloosa. So yeah, I'm sure it's not only a recruiting benefit, but a motivational factor for a lot of the guys that are on the team right now.
It's how you help those 5 stars sort of legitimize that ranking during their time at Alabama. And, Scott's got all those televisions in that humongous weight room of his. I would just have the signing tweets in free agency playing on those, just rotating on those screens while we were probably having workouts. Charlie, as we let you go here, obviously just one practice under their belt, that one before spring break last Friday. Ali Cahoe, the second-year inside linebacker, a no-show for that first practice. What's your expectation for him specifically, and how much that position needs him as we get into spring drills fully next week?
Yeah, they need him. It's a thin position. You look out there, and there were a couple spots that are pretty thin, and that's to be expected sometime in the spring, because you're not going to have your full depth there, because some guys are going to come in the summer. You can always accept a transfer or two, but they need Ollie there for depth reasons, and he's a guy that I think can compete for that starting job, as well as Josh McMillan. There are others as well, but I think seeing him on the field for every game last year after getting here in fall camp, and some of the plays that he made on all the special teams units he played on, shows that he's a promising young player. It's the same thing that a lot of other linebackers have done in Alabama, like Mack Wilson, Reuben Foster, the list goes on and on. But it's going to be interesting to see, when we walk out there on Monday, what the situation is with Ale, because he put on social media that he's going to be back real soon. But just from hearing a few things after that, I don't know what the case is going to be. I think he still has some things to sort out, and obviously that's a private matter and something that he's dealing with off the field, and you want to respect that. But a lot of people were looking forward to seeing him out on the field, seeing that number 10, up near the front of that inside linebacker line, and that wasn't the case on Friday. So it's going to be something we continue to monitor. I wouldn't be shocked to see him out there Monday, but at the same time, I wouldn't be that surprised if he's not out there as well.
There you go. Charlie Potter does an outstanding job covering the Alabama Crimson Tide for BamaOnline.com. Give Charlie a follow on Twitter. You probably already have. You should have. At Charlie_Potter, Potter. Charlie, look forward to getting back to it on the football field next week. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, man. Thanks for having me.